Usually when we talk about how a person ends up where they are in life, we think of it a lot like gravity.
Oh, yeah. Like it's just this unavoidable force.
Right, exactly. Imagine you are this boulder and you're resting at the top of a really steep hill. And something or someone gives you a push.
Just a little nudge.
Yeah, maybe it's, a deeply difficult childhood or a toxic work environment or even just a really painful rejection. And you just start tumbling down.
And at that point, the path feels completely set.
It really does. Gravity and momentum just take over. Your present reality feels like the inevitable result of that very first push. I mean, we look at our anxieties or our failures and say, well, of course I am this way. Look at what happened to me.
Right. And, it is an incredibly comforting way to view the world, really.
Oh, for sure. It lets us off the hook.
Exactly. We trace the path of the boulder back up the hill. We point to a specific bump and we say, that right there, that is why I am rolling this way.
It makes sense of the pain.
It does. It provides this neat linear narrative. But more importantly, like you said, it largely absolves us of the responsibility to change our current trajectory. I mean, if gravity is in control, we can't really be blamed for where we land.
But what if gravity, in this psychological sense anyway, is just an illusion? What if the boulder is actually steering itself the entire time, choosing every single bump and crash?
Now, that is a wild thought.
It is. And welcome to today's deep dive. We have curated a custom intellectual journey designed specifically for you, the curious learner who wants maximum insight without, all the overwhelming information overload.
So no textbooks required today.
Right, no textbooks. Today, we are looking at some truly paradigm-shifting excerpts from the massive bestseller, The Courage to Be Disliked by Ichiro Kishimi and Fumitake Koga.
In this text, it takes the form of a classical dialogue. It's this back-and-forth philosophical conversation between a philosopher and a youth,
which makes it really engaging. And the mission of this deep dive is to explore a radical, highly counterintuitive framework, one that claims to hold a very different answer to finding true freedom and happiness.
And it does so by completely upending how we understand our own minds.
Okay, let's unpack this, because to get to that freedom, we have to entirely rethink trauma, our interpersonal relationships, and basically the expectations of practically every single person around us.
Yeah, to set the stage properly, we really need to introduce the architect of this framework, and that is Alfred Adler.
Right, who people might not immediately recognize.
Exactly. You have likely heard of Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung, but Adler is widely considered the third giant of psychology from that same era, right at the turn of the 20th century.
He was actually part of Freud's inner circle at first, wasn't he?
He was, yeah. But he eventually broke away to form what he called individual psychology. And what's really fascinating here is that Adler's theories were remarkably ahead of their time.
Like, shockingly modern.
Absolutely. They directly challenge the fundamental, culturally accepted ways we understand our past and our pain.
And when we say challenge, I mean Adler's framework introduces a radical paradigm shift right out of the gate.
It really does not pull its punches.
Not at all. Because to understand how this philosophy defines freedom, we first have to understand what Adler claims is not holding us back. And that is our past.
Right.
According to Adlerian psychology, trauma as this deterministic force that dictates our future, it just does not exist.
Which is a profound shock to the system, especially in our modern culture.
Oh, completely. We are so deeply entrenched in Freudian psychology.
Right, which relies on etiology. That's the study of causation. Freud essentially argued that who we are today is directly caused by past trauma.
The boulder getting pushed down the hill.
Exactly. But Adler's framework completely rejects this causal determinism. Instead, Adler operates on teleology, which is the study of purpose.
Teleology, okay.
Yeah. In teleology, who we are and how we behave is driven entirely by our present goals, not our past causes.
The sources provide a very relatable, everyday example to illustrate this teleology concept.
Right.
So imagine you are sitting at a nice cafe, and you're wearing your absolute favorite, most expensive jacket.
Oh, no, I know where this is going.
Yeah. A waiter walks by and accidentally spills a full cup of coffee all over it.
Yeah.
Instantly, you erupt. You are screaming at this waiter. Your face is red. You're making a massive scene.
A totally natural reaction, most people would say.
Right. In the traditional Freudian view, the spilled coffee is the direct cause.
Yeah.
And your anger is the unavoidable, uncontrollable effect. You would likely defend yourself by saying, I couldn't help it, the anger just took over.
But Adlerian teleology views that situation through a completely different lens. Adler would argue that your reaction is actually a fabrication.
Wait, a fabrication?
Yeah. You did not yell because you were overcome by a sudden, uncontrollable surge of emotion. You actually fabricated the emotion of anger as a tool to achieve a very specific present goal.
I have to pause there. Because, that sounds completely counter to lived experience.
It does feel that way at first. Like, if I blow up at someone in traffic or at a cafe, the adrenaline is real. My heart is pounding. Are you saying I'm not losing control, but rather using anger as a calculated weapon?
Within this framework, yes. Your subconscious goal in that split second was to make the waiter submit to you. You wanted to dominate the situation and force an immediate apology or, some kind of compensation.
So the anger is just a shortcut.
Exactly. Doing that through calm, rational communication takes time and effort. Anger is a cheap, fast, highly effective tool to enforce submission. You pulled the emotion of anger out to do the heavy interpersonal lifting for you.
Okay, I think I get it. It's like an actor pulling a pop sword out of a theatrical trunk.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Right. The anger does not control the actor. The actor just recognizes that the scene requires domination, so they reach into the trunk, pull out the prop sword of anger, and wield it.
That analogy captures the mechanics perfectly.
Right.
And the text points out how quickly we can actually put that prop sword back in the trunk when it no longer serves our goal.
Like when the audience changes. Precisely. Consider a mother who is screaming furiously at her child. The phone suddenly rings, and it's the child's homeroom teacher.
Oh, we've all seen this happen.
Right. The mother picks up the receiver and instantly switches to a polite, calm, measured voice. Hello, how are you? The moment the call ends, she hangs up and goes right back to screaming at the child.
Wow. Yeah, if the anger were truly an uncontrollable biological force, she could not switch it off merely because the audience changed.
Exactly. She is choosing the anger for the child and choosing the polite demeanor for the teacher.
Okay, so the cafe and the phone call make sense on a superficial level. But the youth in the text brings up a much heavier scenario to push back on this.
He does, yeah. It gets pretty intense.
He describes a friend who is a severe recluse. This individual has shut himself in his room for years. And if he takes a single step outside the front door, he suffers severe palpitations, his breathing gets shallow, his limbs physically shake.
A full-blown panic response.
Right. And the youth argues that this is undeniable trauma.
Yeah.
The friend was bullied or abused in the past, and now he is permanently trapped by those past causes.
And this is where the Adlerian teleology becomes highly controversial. But it is also mathematically consistent with the theory.
How so?
Well, the philosopher argues that the recluse friend is not trapped by his past. He is actually creating the anxiety and the physical symptoms because he harbors a present goal. He wants to stay inside his room.
But wait, how does a subconscious goal create genuine physical shaking? It sounds almost like Adler is accusing the man of faking it.
It does sound like that, but that's not what he's saying.
Because if his heart is racing and his hands are trembling, that is an autonomic nervous system response, not a conscious choice.
Right. Adler is not saying the friend is consciously pretending to shake. The physical symptoms are very real. But the mechanism works like this. The individual's overarching subconscious goal is to remain safely inside. So, to ensure the physical body complies with this goal, the mind signals the nervous system to produce a genuine panic attack. The fear is real, the shaking is real, but they are manufactured by the mind to fulfill the purpose of staying indoors.
And the obvious question there is, why on earth would someone's subconscious goal be to stay locked in a room, suffering in total isolation?
Because if he stays in his room, he remains the absolute center of his parents' worried attention.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they handle him with kid gloves, they cater to his needs. His life has a very specific protected gravity to it. But if he walks out that front door, he instantly becomes just another average faceless person in the masses.
Right, he might fail, he might be rejected.
Exactly. That special treatment vanishes. So to fulfill the goal of remaining special and avoiding the risks of the outside world, his mind manufactures the necessary physical symptoms to keep him inside.
I see the logic. But applied to real life, that feels uncomfortably close to victim blaming.
It is a very common and understandable critique of this philosophy, yeah.
Because if someone has suffered genuine abuse, telling them they are choosing their current anxiety just to get attention feels really dismissive of their past pain.
It does. However, Adler's framework does not deny that terrible things happen or that abuse causes profound pain. It really doesn't.
Okay, so what is the distinction?
What it rejects is the idea that the past dictates the future. Adlerian psychology argues that no experience is in itself a cause of our success or failure. We do not suffer from the shock of our experiences, the so-called trauma, but instead we make out of them whatever suits our purposes.
So it removes the excuse.
Exactly. It removes the comfort of having an excuse, which is daunting. But the trade-off is that it returns total agency to you. If your past does not determine your future, then you have the power to change your lifestyle in this exact moment.
Which naturally forces us to look at the next layer of the puzzle. If our past trauma is not the root of our unhappiness, and if we're subconsciously manufacturing these limiting symptoms to serve present goals, why do we need these goals in the first place?
Right. What are we protecting ourselves from?
Exactly. What are we defending ourselves against?
Well, Adler provides a sweeping foundational answer to that question. He states categorically all problems are interpersonal relationship problems.
Every single one.
Every single one. You might assume that something like loneliness is a purely internal, solitary issue. But to feel lonely, you require the existence of other people and a society to feel excluded from.
That makes sense.
Right. If you were the only human being in the universe, the concept of loneliness would be literally incomprehensible.
We only understand ourselves as individuals when we have a social context to contrast ourselves against. And the source text gives a fascinating case study about this. A female student who came to the philosopher for counseling.
Oh, the blushing student. Yes. Right. She suffered from a chronic fear of blushing. Whenever she was around other people, she would turn bright red, and she claimed this symptom was completely ruining her life.
It was paralyzing for her.
Yeah. She told the philosopher she wanted it cured so she could finally gather the courage to confess her romantic feelings to a boy she liked. And, in a traditional therapeutic setup, the focus would be on treating the blushing directly, like, let's fix the symptom.
But the Adlerian approach looks at the teleological purpose of the blushing. Why did her mind need to manufacture this specific physical response?
And according to the philosopher, she needed the fear of blushing as a convenient excuse for not confessing her love.
Because as long as she had this disease holding her back, she never had to face the very real, terrifying possibility that the boy might reject her.
Exactly.
The blushing was just a preemptive shield. It was protecting her ego from the judgment of another person.
Precisely. She could live in a safe realm of possibility, telling herself, well, I could be with him if only I didn't have this blushing problem. She preferred the symptom over the risk of interpersonal rejection.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because the book dives deeply into feelings of inferiority as the primary driver of these interpersonal fears.
It's a huge part of his theory.
And the philosopher uses his own physical appearance as an example. He is 155 centimeters tall, which is roughly 5'1". And for a long portion of his life, he felt deeply inferior about his height. He thought it literally made him less valuable as a person.
But then he realized his height was not objectively inferior. It was merely a measurement.
Right. If there were no other human beings to compare himself to, 155 centimeters would carry no emotional weight whatsoever.
It's just a number. The feeling of inferiority is a completely subjective assumption. It only exists because we constantly compare ourselves to the people around us.
But the text makes a very careful distinction here. Having feelings of inferiority is not inherently a psychological defect, is it?
Not at all.
Yeah.
Actually, Adler's framework argues that a healthy feeling of inferiority is the primary launch pad for all human progress.
Oh, so it's a good thing.
It is the engine of growth. Think about it. You feel you are lacking in scientific knowledge, so you study harder. You feel your crops are vulnerable to weather, so you invent better agriculture. That is the natural, healthy pursuit of superiority.
But it crosses the line into toxicity when it morphs into an inferiority complex.
Yes, that is a very different thing.
That is when a person starts using their perceived shortcomings as an impenetrable excuse to stop trying altogether. They create a narrative like, I am not well educated, therefore I can never succeed.
They give up before they even start.
Right. They use the feeling of inferiority as a shield to avoid the grueling, risky work of attempting to change their life.
And the behavioral flip side of that is the superiority complex. This occurs when someone harbors deep, unaddressed feelings of inferiority, but completely lacks the courage to do the hard work of self-improvement.
So what do they do?
Well, to compensate, they fabricate an illusion of superiority. They excessively name-drop powerful acquaintances, or they obsess over displaying luxury brands, or they just constantly redirect conversations to their past glories.
Basically trying to convince everyone they're great.
Exactly. They are desperately trying to prove to others that they have value because they secretly fear they do not.
And the most manipulative manifestation of this, according to the text, is what Adler calls making weakness powerful.
Yes, this is such a fascinating concept.
People will actually weaponize their misfortune, their trauma, or their victimhood to demand special treatment and control the behavior of everyone around them.
It's control through fragility.
Yeah. And the text uses a brilliant example. In human culture, the absolute strongest person in any household is usually an infant.
It's so true.
The baby rules the entire house, dictating when people sleep and what they do, precisely because the baby is weak and requires accommodation.
It is a profound observation. When adults use their suffering as a trump card to command a room or shut down criticism, they're utilizing weakness as a tool for interpersonal domination.
They're acting like the baby in the house.
Exactly. And all of these complexes stem from viewing life as a fundamental competition. If you are constantly comparing yourself to others to gauge your worth, you inevitably divide the entire world into winners and losers.
Which means every single person around you functionally becomes an enemy. Even if you are currently winning the competition, you can never actually relax because someone is always climbing the ladder to take your spot.
It's exhausting.
There is a quote from the youth's grandmother in the text that cuts right to the bone of this paranoia. She says, "You're the only one who's worried how you look."
Oof, that's a powerful line.
Right. If Adler's premise is correct, and we are constantly exhausting ourselves by viewing others as judges or competitors, how do we ever stop fighting?
Well, that is the core dilemma of the human condition in Adlerian terms. And the framework provides a highly practical, albeit incredibly demanding solution.
Okay, what is it?
To find peace and step out of the competition, you have to master a concept called the separation of tasks.
This concept is where the rubber really meets the road. Because the philosophy argues that practically all of our interpersonal friction, all the stress, the arguing, the resentment, it comes from either intruding on someone else's task or allowing them to intrude on ours.
Yeah, and to figure out whose task a specific problem is, you simply ask one clarifying question. Who ultimately receives the end result of the choice that is made?
So let's take a classic household conflict. A child who absolutely refuses to do their homework. The parent is stressed, yelling, hiring expensive tutors, perhaps grounding the child.
A very common dynamic.
Right. But if we ask Adler's question, who ultimately receives the end result of not studying? Well, it is not the parent. The parent will not fail the math class, nor will the parent miss out on college admissions.
The child receives the result.
Exactly. Therefore, studying is the child's task.
And when a parent forces a child to study through threats or punishment, they are violently intruding on the child's task. Adler actually argues this intrusion is the primary cause of childhood rebellion.
That makes a lot of sense.
But now, it is vital to clarify that Adler does not advocate for parental neglect. Separating tasks does not mean abandoning the person. You let the child know you are there to support them, you offer assistance and resources, but you do not force them to act.
I hear the logic. But applying to the messy reality of adulthood, that sounds incredibly reckless. Let me push back on this.
Sure, go ahead.
What if we aren't talking about a kid's homework? What if my spouse is making terrible, destructive financial decisions? If I just watch them drain our savings and say, well, spending money is your task, I am going to suffer the fallout too when we lose the house.
That's a very real concern.
Where is the line between separating tasks and just letting your shared life burn to the ground?
That is the exact friction point where most people struggle with Adler. In the case of the spouse, the separation of tasks does not mean you stay in a burning house.
Okay, good.
It means you recognize what you can control and what you cannot. You cannot control your spouse's spending habits. Forcing them or manipulating them will only breed resentment. Their behavior is their task.
So what's my task?
Your task is deciding how you will respond to their behavior to protect yourself. Will you separate bank accounts? Will you seek counseling? Will you end the partnership? You manage your tasks, but you stop trying to control theirs.
That implies that every time I have bent over backwards to control a situation under the guise of being a quote-unquote good partner or, helping them, I wasn't actually being selfless. I was just managing my own anxiety.
That is exactly it. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, The text uses a really powerful historical anecdote to illustrate this. We are deeply conditioned by reward and punishment education.
We want the gold stars.
Right. We are taught that we must act to satisfy the expectations of others in order to be praised and avoid punishment. So we become entangled in this massive web of trying to please everyone. The book compares this to the legend of Alexander the Great and the Gordian knot.
Right. The legend goes that there was a knot tied to a chariot in the city of Gordium that was so impossibly complex no one could untie it.
It was a famous puzzle.
And the prophecy stated that whoever unraveled it would rule all of Asia. Countless men spent years pulling out the ropes, trying to figure out the intricate logic of the knot. But Alexander arrived, looked at the tangled mess, drew his sword, and simply sliced the knot in half.
He refused to play by the rules of the tangled mess. And the bonds of our interpersonal relationships are desperate attempts to balance the expectations of our parents, our bosses, our friends, are that impossibly tangled Gordian knot.
We try to untie it by making everyone happy.
And we end up exhausted and paralyzed. The separation of tasks is Alexander's sword. You do not untie the expectation, you slice right through it. You say, that is your task to be disappointed. This is my task to live my life.
Which brings us to the ultimate, rather intimidating climax of this philosophy. Because slicing that knot goes against our very nature. Humans have a deeply ingrained, almost biological inclination to want to be liked.
We want to belong to the pack.
We do. We want to be accepted for survival. But living your entire life just to appease the gaze of everyone around you means living a life of constant, exhausting lies. You're essentially swearing loyalty to 10 different people who all demand entirely different things from you.
It is the definition of an unfree life. You are hostage to other people's emotional reactions. And here is where Adler delivers the thesis that gives the book its title.
The courage to be disliked.
Yes. The youth asks the philosopher what true freedom actually looks like. And the philosopher answers, freedom is being disliked by other people.
Freedom is being disliked. That is a massive mental pivot.
It really is.
And it is important to note that the book isn't telling you to go out of your way to be a malicious jerk. It isn't endorsing cruelty.
No, not at all.
It is saying that you must accept being disliked as the unavoidable cost of doing business when you live authentically. It is the toll you pay to live in accordance with your own principles rather than someone else's script.
The philosopher shares a deeply personal, vulnerable story to anchor this concept. As a child, he had a terribly strained relationship with his father, who used to physically beat him.
That's awful.
It was. And for decades, the philosopher used the memory of those beatings as the causal excuse for why their relationship remained broken. He waited for his father to change, to acknowledge the past, and to apologize before he would engage.
Which most people would say is totally justified.
Absolutely. But through studying Adlerian psychology, the philosopher realized he was actually holding the interpersonal relationship cards.
Wait, how could he hold the cards if his father was the one who committed the abuse?
Because the philosopher realized his present teleological goal was to maintain the bad relationship as a way to quietly punish his father.
Oh, wow.
Once he applied the separation of tasks, he saw the truth. Whether his father felt remorse or apologized or even changed his behavior at all was entirely the father's task. The philosopher's task was simply to decide if he wanted to drop his resentment and change his own goal moving forward.
So he just let it go.
He repaired his side of the relationship on his own terms without waiting for the other person to move first. He played his own cards.
I think of it like this. It is as if we spend our entire adult lives running a high-budget, incredibly stressful PR campaign.
Oh, I love this analogy.
Yeah, we are constantly spitting our image, managing our reputation, trying to ensure every single demographic we encounter approves of us. Adler's framework is basically telling us to just fire the PR team. Close the entire department.
Just shut it down.
Shut it down. The pushback we get from society, the fact that some people will actively dislike the choices we make, isn't a failure of our PR campaign. It is actual tangible proof that the campaign is finally over. It is proof we are no longer manipulating ourselves to fit their mold.
This raises an important question about the aftermath, though. When you fire the PR team and slice the Gordian knot, you stop rolling downhill like that boulder you mentioned at the start.
Right.
You stand up, and you refuse to let the friction of everyone else's demands smooth away your edges.
So what does this all mean for you, the person listening right now? If we accept Adler's framework, you are not a stone tumbling powerlessly down a hill of past trauma. You are not permanently defined by the things that happen to you, and you are not bound by the heavy, suffocating expectations of your family, your workplace, or society.
you have the ability to push back.
You can draw Alexander's sword, separate your tasks, and recognize that you hold the cards to your own interpersonal relationships.
But it is crucial to understand that separating your tasks and finding the courage to be disliked is not the final destination.
It's not the end of the road.
No, it is merely the gateway. Adler introduces a final, vital concept called holism and community feeling.
Right, because if you just slice every tie and ignore everyone, you aren't free, you're just totally isolated.
Precisely. Adler argues that if you are constantly worried about what others think of you, you are ironically being entirely self-centered.
Because you're only thinking about yourself.
Exactly. You are obsessing over I and me. You are treating the world like a flat map with yourself at the absolute center, demanding that everyone else cater to your personal narrative and validate your existence.
But the world is not a flat map?
No, it is a globe. You are a crucial, indivisible part of the whole, but you are not the center of it. True refuge and belonging aren't found by demanding others recognize your worth. They are found by actively committing to the community.
Changing the focus outward.
Right. You stop asking, what will this person give me to make me feel secure? And you start asking, what can I give to this person to contribute to the whole? So I ask you to ponder this as you step back into your life. If you finally stop expecting the world to revolve around your need for approval, what is the first step you can take to actively contribute to the globe today?